Hello and welcome to today's episode in which I test out the Temu dumpling maker. If you've seen my Temu review video, you can see that I got very excited about this little dumpling maker, and today's the day I'm going to test it out for the first time. I've been running different fillings through my mind and I've settled on trying out a vegan duck type one and then one with tofu and vegetables. First thing I need to do is get the dough on because that needs to rest for an hour, so let's start with that. I'm going to do 500 grams of flour, that's all-purpose flour or AP. So it's around 4 cups of flour if you're doing volume measurements. I'm going to sieve the flour just so it's nice and fluffy and light, no lumps. If you can, I would stick to grams on this one so it's a bit more precise. And then I've measured out 260 grams of cold water, which is 1 cup and 4 teaspoons. I'm going to add that in gradually. The amount of water you need will depend on where you live because of the humidity and also the type of flour, although even the brand or bag of flour that you use. They vary bag to bag sometimes. Now, I've never made dumplings before, so I'm not sure what to look out for really. So it's one of those kind of suck it and see type of things. I found the recipe for dumplings on redhousespices.com. There's plenty of good instructions on there. So I'm taking my lead a little bit from them. I'm just trying to bring it together into a rough dough to start with. Then we'll let it rest and give it another knead. I've gone for a double batch because I'd like to freeze some as well. So now it's all together in a ball. I'm going to grab a damp tea cloth to cover this. The dough needs an initial rest of 10 minutes, so I'm going to take that time and start making a dipping sauce. I'm going to do 2 dipping sauces with it. One will be just like soy vinegar, toasted sesame oil, that kind of thing. It's very simple and basic. And then I'm going to do plum and ginger. So that needs just to be cooked down into like a thin puree. These are the little plums that I'm going to use. They don't have tons of flavour. I guess it's not fully seasoned yet, but they'll be fine. And there's quite a lot of nice flavours in the skin. So I'm just going to kind of quarter them into the pan. Skins, and I'm also going to leave the stones in there because then I'll sieve out the puree once everything's cooked. I've got 9 or 10 plums quartered in there. I zoned out and stopped counting. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. I'll add a couple of tablespoons of Shaoxing rice wine into that. So that's the stuff I use. I get this from the Chinese supermarket. I have seen small bottles in Sainsbury's, you know, like in a mainstream supermarket. I'm going to do this on a low heat. I'm going to pop it on 5 and I've put the lid on. Just let them simmer away a little bit. Back to the dough. Kneading and resting develops the gluten, so that's the purpose of that. And it goes nice and stretchy. The protein chains start developing. Kind of fold it around on itself just to make sure the inside gets nicely kneaded as well. So this feels nice and even, consistent in texture. There's no lumps or dry sections or anything. I'm going to leave this for kind of 30 to 60 minutes and just keep coming back and giving the sauce a stir just to make sure nothing catches on the bottom. The rice wine's in there and those plums are very juicy, so it should be fine, but better to check than have burnt plums. Onto the dumpling fillings. So I'm going to start with the tofu and vegetable ones first. I've got 2 large carrots. I'm just going to give these a peel. I want the veg in the dumplings to maintain a little bit of crunch to them, just so it's not pure mush as you bite into it. So I've decided to run them through the mandolin on probably the thickest setting. If you haven't got a mandolin, just do it by hand or in the food processor, that kind of thing. For the carrots, I think I'll do them in quarters. So what I'm going to do is cut them in half. And then I want to try and leave the end attached, just so then I've got something to grip as I'm putting it through the mandolin. And just cut that into quarters. Mandolin these straight into the bowl. With a mandolin, just watch your fingers. Bamboo shoots and water chestnuts, these are both 225 gram tins. That's 120 drained and that's 140. Bamboo shoots and water chestnuts have both got really nice crunchy texture even when they're cooked. So I'm just going to roughly chop through these. I'm thinking I might have to do the carrots a bit smaller. That's going to be the size of the dumpling, so that's the size of the filling there. So, no, that might be all right actually. But I will go smaller on the other bits to compensate. Going to show you the sauce quickly. That's where we're at. So it's all bubbling away and starting to go a lovely deep red colour. I'm going to pop some of this in. In the UK, this is called Chinese leaf. I think this is Napa cabbage in the States. This is what you make kimchi out of. I'm going to put a few leaves in. So I've got 6 leaves at the moment. I might need a bit more, but we'll see. And I'm going to use the white part in the duck dumplings, and then I'll use the free part in these ones. So I'm just going to slice that away. Because the white is got a texture a bit like, maybe a little bit like radish, that kind of crunch to it. I've got a stack of the leaves, so I'll go kind of through the middle there lengthways. and then chop that down smaller. So it's about that. I've got some fresh coriander, so I'm just going to blitz through that. I'm going to do stalk and everything. You can pick it if you want, but I like the crunchiness of the stalk. I'll do the same of flat leaf parsley, so just kind of scrunch it into a bunch. This is a 450 gram block of extra firm tofu. I think do little kind of cubes maybe. So I'll cut it into planks. So now I'm just going back through and cutting it down into smaller strips, and then I'll swivel those around like that, and then we'll go horizontal. Might have to do these smaller actually. I keep forgetting they're going in dumplings. I'm just going to pass the knife over it roughly, just to break them down a touch. This is way more filling than I need, but I'm going to have this, just fry it off tomorrow, and some ginger and garlic, and then I've got a banging little stir fry ready to go. Let's go pay some attention to the sauce for a second. I'm going to put in about a 1.5 inch piece of ginger. To peel it, I'm going to show you a little trick. So I use the edge of a spoon, and I don't know where that's going to show up. This spoon's got a slightly sharper edge. It's kind of flat, but you can use any spoon really. You just drag it up and over the side, and it takes off the peel without taking lots of the ginger itself away. Whereas slicing it, you end up losing quite a bit of the flesh. There we go. Peeled piece of ginger. Minimum wastage. I'm going to use a coarse microplane to grate it in. One of my patrons just bought me this very kindly off my Amazon wish list, so I'm just going to rest it on the pan, grate it straight in. So the ginger is going to give a nice ginger aromatic flavour, but also give it a bit of punchy heat as well. I'm going to add in some Szechuan peppercorns. So these have got peppery flavour, but there's also a kind of lemon citrus sort of vibe to them as well. These also make the tip of your tongue go a little bit numb, so I'm not going to go bananas with it. So it's probably 1/4 teaspoon, something like that. And then I'll let that infuse for a bit, and then I can add a bit more if it needs it once I've passed it through the sieve. And back to the unnecessarily large bowl of filling. So now I'm going to season this up. I'm going to guzzle in a couple tablespoons of sunflower oil. Just want any neutral flavoured oil. Good grind of black pepper. You could use a Szechuan in this as well if you want. 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of salt, good pinch, because you've got lots of bland flavours in there. Teaspoon of onion powder, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic granules, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of Chinese spice. Give this a good stir together. I'm just going to go in my hands, make it easier. Now, feel free to add in loads of flavourings and seasonings into the mixture if you want, but I want the dipping sauces to do the heavy lifting. So I'm just squidging it a little bit because then it'll compact a bit better. Check the flavour, touch more salt, and then we're good to go. Cover that, put it to the side. We're going to finish off the sauce by passing it through a sieve and adding in something salty. So pour this in, and then just use a spoon and force it through. Just pulling the stones out as I come across them. Scrape all the goodness off the bottom of the sieve. So it leaves you behind with all the bits of skin and stuff. I could probably take that a bit further, but my arm's really hurting. So I'm just going to wash the sieve because you don't want the bits to dry in there. Pour the mixture back into the pan. Get the heat back on. I've got that on 5. It needs a little bit of sweetness. I'm going to add a little drop of maple syrup, 1/2 teaspoon to start with. You can just use sugar or agave nectar, anything like that. If you want it sugar-free, you could use a bit of a sweetener. Give that a taste. I'm going to do a little bit of white miso. That's about 1/2 teaspoon maybe. You can use brown as well. I just find brown's got a deeper, saltier and more umami kind of flavour, which is why I've gone for the white, because it's lighter. You could use just salt, or you could use a little bit of soy sauce. Soy sauce has got quite a powerful flavour to it though, and I want the plums and the ginger to, kind of speak for themselves. Tiny bit more maple syrup, so maybe a teaspoon in total. That's going to depend on your plums though, because those are very tart plums. So just do a little bit and taste it, and a little bit. And if you want to keep this in the fridge for a couple of weeks, just pack in loads of sugar, and that acts as a bit of a preservative. In this form, it'll last a week maybe. And I'm going to leave that on the heat for a few minutes, just to reduce a tiny bit. Onto the duck dumplings. Found this vegan duck from a company called Dopsu. This is like vegetable proteins, wheat powder, that kind of thing. Methyl cellulose, standard meat substitute ones. I've not tried them before, so I've had them in the freezer and I've been thinking, what can I do with those? Dumplings. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a duck flavour, but it's a nice flavour. Break it down. It's got great texture. very chewy. That's all the duck crumbled down into smaller pieces. For a nice bit of crunch, I'm going to add some cashews. These are just raw cashews. This is 140 grams a cup. I'll start with half. If I'm honest, I'd meant to toast these first, but I forgot. But that's fine. So I'm just going to break these down to smaller pieces. I'm just going to mix that amount and see what the ratio is like. Do a few more. Yeah, I think that's a good ratio. Get the little cabbage ribs. I think I'll do... I've got 6 spring onions or scallions, green onions, whatever you want to use. So I'm just going to take off the outer layers of peel because the outer ones can be a bit tough, which you don't want. I've taken off the very dark bits just because they're quite fibrous. I want to try something. I don't know if this is going to work. I've got one of these little egg slicing gizmos, and I'm just wondering if I can use it to slice spring onions. Haha, yes. It's not perfect, but yeah, that'll do. Got all my long strips in a pile, so I'm just gonna chop those down to 1/2 inch or so pieces, like a centimetre or so. Okay, and then on to seasoning up the duck one. I'll do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, grind of black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of spice. To nudge the flavour further into duck territory, I'm going to splash in a little bit of tequila. I find it has a kind of gamey, livery vibe to it. So I'll do a teaspoon maybe, and then a splurt of barbecue sauce. Only like a tablespoon or so. And then mix this together. Check the flavour. I think that is good to go. I'll have a final check of the sauce, and then if that's ready, I can turn the heat off and just leave the lid on. I'm just going to use a silicone spatula, get the sides scraped down a bit. Yeah, I think that's good to go. Turn the heat off, but I'll leave it uncovered and then a bit more steam can escape. On to making the dumplings. I'm going to try for the first time making a dumpling skirt, which is like a little lacy, frilly bit that you fry dumplings in. So I'm going to make up the slurry for that, and then that's done and out the way. I've got 2 cups of water in a measuring jug. It's about 480 mils. 3 tablespoons of rice vinegar. 4 teaspoons of plain flour, again the all-purpose flour. 4 teaspoons of cornstarch, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Last night in bed I was trying to find the official name for a dumpling skirt, and I came across, I think it was a YouTube short where a guy was making a dumpling skirt. Oh no, it was TikTok. Now this recipe doesn't have oil in the slurry, whereas his did. And I think it's the oil that gives it the frilliness. So I might dump some oil into this as well. So I'll do like 3 tablespoons, maybe 2-3 tablespoons. And then I'll put that to the side. I've got a piece of baking parchment on the chopping board, just so nothing sticks. And then I've got the dumpling maker, the duck filling there, and then I've got the bowl still covered there. You want to keep it covered with a damp cloth or at least a plate or cling film just so it doesn't dry out. So I kind of roll it a bit into a ball. Because that's going to be very thick. Yeah, this is this is disappointing because I really don't want to get the rolling pin out because that's going to take forever. I just don't think I'm going to ever be able to get it as thin as I want it in this thing, which is very annoying. I hadn't accounted for that. I'll use soy sauce bottle. So I've got the disc rolled out, and I'll put some filling in. Need to be careful not to overfill it too much. And then, so we just flip this bit over. That's too much. Okay, so there is the little dumpling. The problem is it oozes out the back of it there. And then you can't quite lift it out. If anyone's used one of these makers successfully and has any tips, do let me know in the comments. So I'm doing with the tofu mixture. I've done 5 of each. I'm on a bit of a time limit today, so I can't do more. And they're very, well, they're not very tidy, are they? That gadget's just a piece of trash. Almost swore. Let's get these in the pan. So I'm heating up about a tablespoon of sunflower oil. So I've been warming the pan, so I'm just going to kick that up onto a 7. I'm going to drop the dumplings on. And you want to do them in a kind of circular kind of pattern. Cover them with a lid for a minute. I'm whisking the slurry, the starches and the flour will sit at the bottom, so just stir it back together again. Once they're sizzling, I'm going to pour a good amount of the slurry in. And then we'll put the lid on 5-6 minutes, let them steam away. We'll quickly do another little dipping sauce. This one's super easy. I'm going to do a couple tablespoons of light soy sauce, a teaspoon of black rice vinegar, maybe half a teaspoon of sesame oil. Stir together. You can put shredded spring onion, fresh garlic, that kind of thing, fresh ginger if you want. I'm just going to go fairly simple on this one, and that's good to go. Park you in front of the dumpling window. You can be having a look. So you can see the slurry is bubbling away there nicely. All right. I'm going to give them another minute, I think. Not quite as plump as I think they should look. Let's have another look now. Okay. And I'm going to leave them uncovered because what we want is for it to crisp. I'm just going to jimmy them around. No, this isn't going exactly how I envisioned it. I've got a horrible feeling the bottom of this pan has bowed. Just at a bit of a loss as to why the side bits aren't colouring at all. I don't understand it. Okay, well I'm going to call it there because I think it's just going to get burnt otherwise. So I'm going to try and drain these onto a plate with some paper towel just because of all that oil. Because really I should just be inverting it straight onto a plate, but if I do that, it'll just be a big pool of oil. So here's the little dumplings, all crispy and golden. And I've got the 2 dipping sauces. I'm going to dive in for one. It's a bit of a potluck as to which one it is. Going with the plum. The wrapper's too thick. But as a first attempt at doing dumplings, not bad at all. And the filling, the flavour's incredible. The skirt does go nice and crispy. So it's worth doing, it does add something. So hopefully this is the other one. Yeah, that flavour's banging. That tequila's really helped it become duck-like. The plum sauce is a really nice accompaniment to it because it's got really bright, vibrant flavours, whereas the fillings and the other dipping sauce are quite umami. If you don't want to go to the hassle of making the dumpling wrappers like that, if you look in the Chinese supermarket, you'll find wonton wrappers, spring roll wrappers, maybe even dumpling wrappers that come in packets. Grab some of those. Or you can use the Vietnamese summer roll wrappers. So these are kind of clear. These are the ones that I used in the baked crispy dumplings. So that would just save so much hassle. And it's very thin as well, so you don't have to worry about getting the wrapper super thin or anything. So that's going to save a ton of time, which I might actually use this for the rest of that filling. As for the dumpling maker, I don't feel quite right putting it straight in the bin. So maybe I'll give it one more try. And then if not, I've no idea. But it's just not great. So I think hand doing it, you're going to be able to A, get much more filling in, and B, get a bit more control over it, because that's just very imprecise, so it's not very forgiving. So if you've got a sharp edge, it will just punch straight through the dough. I want to say a great big thank you to my supporters on Patreon. Your help's super appreciated. I post a few behind the scenes things, some of my acting stuff on there as well. So if you want to join up, links down in the description for you. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications if you want to be alerted every time there's a new video. I do ingredient deep dives, of course vegan recipes, and also gadget tryouts. And while you're waiting for the next one, have a look at this.